Calling to order the Finance and Economic Planning Committee meeting, ending, which evacuation.
Upon activation of emergency alarm signal, all persons should immediately exit the building. Please use the exits to the left, right, or front of the council chamber or the east or west stairwell outside of the rear doors of the chamber. Do not use elevators or escalators. After exiting the building, proceed to the assembly area located in front of the Department of Social Services building at 900 East Marshall Street. Citizens and employees should assist visually and hearing impaired visitors with exiting the building. Individuals wishing to speak during the public comment period and/or public hearings are generally allowed 3 minutes to speak. Persons speaking before the committee are not allowed to campaign for public office, promote prior business ventures, use language of a personal nature which assaults or demeans any person, including comments directed at public officials or staff members that are not related to their official duties, or address a question to staff members directly. All questions will be directed to the committee chair. Failure to adhere to the guidelines may result in speakers forfeiting any remaining time and further disciplinary action as necessary, which could include barring from attendance at future meetings of the committee for a period of 6 months. Madam Chair, this concludes the announcements.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Appreciate that. We will move to the public comment period. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone that has signed up electronically to speak to us?
We have no one that signed up prior to the 10 a.m. deadline to provide comment for items on or off today's agenda. Is there anyone here present in the chamber that would like to provide comments for items not on today's agenda? Seeing none, the public comment period is now closed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we'll move to the approval of the minutes.
The minutes to be approved are from the Wednesday, December 18th, 2024 Finance and Economic Development Standing Committee meeting. If there are no amendments or corrections, then those meeting minutes stand approved as presented. Those minutes have been approved.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, we're going to move to the appointments to boards and commissions next, and then we'll take up the full docket. And also, Madam Clerk, we've agreed that we will take items number 3 and number 4 as a block and number 6 and 7 as a block.
That is correct. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Robertson, Vice Chair Jones, Pamela Nichols, Council Management Analyst. Before you, we have a one vacancy for the Board of Directors for the Economic Development Authority. This vacancy was continued from the committee's meeting in October as they were seeking additional applications. And we did receive additional applications, one being from Taylor Booker, Joseph Chidari, Dustin Dunbar, Kimberly Gray, Jared Lobine, and Marshall Tucker Jr.
Thank you, Ms. Nicholas. We appreciate that. Appreciate the work you do in helping us to fill these vacancies that we have on the board. Is there a recommendation from the committee as it relates to the Economic Development Authority?
Absolutely. The committee is recommending Jared Loybin. We went through background history, and I think it was your mic too. Background history and experiences, and we thought that he was the best fit at this time.
Wonderful.
I support that recommendation. Madam Clerk, do we need to have a public hearing on that?
No, ma'am. We would just need a motion and a second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilperson Jones and second by myself. Call the question.
The committee is voting on the board recommendation as stated. Vice Chair Jones.
Aye.
Chair Robertson. That motion has been approved.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Nicholas. Okay, Madam Clerk, we'll move back to the docket. First item on the docket, please.
Item 1, ordinance 2025-001, to amend the FY 2025 general fund budget and to transfer $500,000 from the non-departmental agency Right to Counsel for Evictions by creating a new line item called the Right to Counsel for Evictions Program, Central Virginia Legal Aid Society, for the purpose of providing funding for a Right to Counsel for Evictions program. That paper is before the committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Ms. Peters?
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Robertson, Vice Chair Jones. I am Michelle Brown Peters, and I'm the Deputy Director for Housing and Community Development. So the ordinance that you are considering this afternoon is to move money that was adopted in the 24-25 budget from non-departmental to create a new line item that will be non-department right to counsel program and award that money to an entity to manage that program. We, as ACD, put out a call for applications to get an organization to manage this program. And we received applications, and we are recommending that the money will go to Central Virginia Legal Aid Society. And the purpose of the program is to provide legal representation to individuals who are facing eviction so that when they go to court, that they will have an attorney there to advise them and assist them with their eviction case. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Ms. Peters, would you elaborate on the partnership with Southside as it relates to our combined effort to address evictions?
So Southside Community Development Corporation is the organization that is managing the city's eviction diversion program. They received $1 million award in this year's budget. $753,200 of that $1 million goes towards paying the direct arrearage for individuals who are facing eviction. They are partnering with, so what Central Virginia Legal Aid Society will do is the two organizations will partner together so that when Southside receives an application for someone to go to court, they will make sure a counsel person will be represented, a counselor will be represented with them in court to be able to help them navigate that process to make sure that the judge, instead of turning the property back over to the property owner, will allow them to work with Southside Community Development Corporation or some of the other nonprofit organizations that are working in this space to help people to maintain their housing. And so it's a referral back from Southside Community Development to Central Virginia Legal Aid Society. However, I want to make sure it's noted here that an individual is not required to go to Southside to get a referral to Central Virginia Legal Aid Society. It's in addition to. So Southside Community Development Corporation can refer individuals to Central Virginia Legal Aid Society, but an individual can also seek out the assistance and ask for a right to counsel from Central Virginia Legal Aid Society without a referral.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. Any additional questions? Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there anyone? Let's have a public hearing on this paper.
Is there anyone here present today that would like to speak in support of item 1? Is there anyone here present today that would like to speak in opposition of item 1? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Bring it back to the body.
Councilman Jones.
I'd like to make a motion.
Concerns?
I like to move that. I like the motion that we move to council for approval.
Thank you. I'll second that.
The committee is voting on the motion to forward item 1, ordinance 2025-001 to council with the recommendation to approve. Vice Chair Jones?
Aye.
Chair Robertson?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Okay, Madam Clerk, number 2 on the agenda.
Item 2, ordinance 2025-002 to authorize the CAO to accept funds in the amount of $1.8 million from the National Opioid Settlement Fund and to appropriate to the Department of Neighborhood and Community Services National Opioid Settlement Special Fund for the purpose of funding opioid abatement and remediation strategies to combat the opioid crisis. That paper is before the committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Good afternoon, Chair Robertson, Vice Chair Jones. My name is Mike Fatula, and I am the Policy Advisor for Opioid Response Coordination here at the City of Richmond. This ordinance to accept the funds of $1,850,287.27 for opioid abatement and remediation projects aimed at reducing the fatal overdose rate in the City of Richmond and improving the lives of those living with substance use disorders and opioid use disorders by investing in projects that are evidence-based for these purposes. These payments are from distributors, including Walgreens, Janssen, Allergan, Teva, Walmart, CVS, and McKinsey from fiscal years the very end of 2023, all of 24, and up to date in 2025. I'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, and we are very pleased that the city participated in this lawsuit to be ultimately a part of this, receiving those funds for the crisis that we have on hand. Can you give us any insight as to how severe this crisis is? How many deaths we've had? How many demands for overdose services, those kinds of things? And more specifically, what is the remediation program that we will use these funds for? Thank you.
Sure. So the overdose crisis in the City of Richmond is serious. It's dire. The City of Richmond has had the highest fatal overdose rate in the Commonwealth of all 133 localities for the past 2 years. So 2023 and 2024, we're still getting the numbers back, or 2022 and 2023. 2024, we're still getting numbers back from multiple data sources. We've seen a decrease, at least initially, in fatal overdoses, but it's still not zero. It's more. We don't know the percentage decrease until we get reconciled numbers from the Virginia Department of Health, specifically the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, who keeps data on all localities, fatal overdose data on all localities across the United States. Or across the Commonwealth of Virginia. So it's a serious situation. We're throwing many resources at it, and evidence-based resources. My position is funded through the National Opioid Settlement Funds under the Ordinance 2023-293 that was approved, that appropriated $1.2 million to fund my position and my counterpart's position. The jail MAT program that we brought in front of you in November and December, that comes from these National Opioid Settlement Funds. And so really, we have the ability to use these funds as long as they fall under this Exhibit E of the settlements. And all these settlements have this same Exhibit E and its allowable uses. There's core strategies, like the jail program is a core strategy, but there's also ancillary strategies such as funding peer recovery specialist programs or other treatment and recovery programs. So by appropriating these funds to our special fund and the National Opioid Settlement Special Fund, it gives us the ability to use those funds towards evidence-based practices in the imminent future.
Jones.
How you doing?
Good.
Great. Quick question. Will these strategies also incorporate any neighborhood strategies? Because I know you mentioned similar to what you're doing, the jail program, and then other areas that you are working, but one, it's Office of Neighborhood and Community Engagement. So how will you integrate this into neighborhoods per se, and through what pathways are you looking to do that?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked that. That's a great question. This is it's a large team effort, right? So through the Richmond Opioid Task Force, we meet monthly. And we meet to identify solutions and gaps to those to funding and treatment strategies to address the opioid crisis in the city, but also the city. I think we mentioned this at one of our meetings last month. I believe it was in EHS that the city of Richmond has been identified as a locality that qualifies for a targeted overdose prevention grant through the Opioid Abatement Authority. And there's a very strong focus on community participation, having a team of like an advisory kind of team that is going to focus on prevention, harm reduction, and treatment efforts for the people that are at the highest risk of fatal overdose in the city of Richmond, which is Black males between the ages of 35 and 55. 7 localities in the state have access to this Operation Stop grant through the OAA, and Richmond City is one of them. So that's in the imminent future. We're going to be planning that with our partners in the community. So thanks for asking.
Okay, thank you. We were refreshing our memory of actually making Narcan available at certain locations throughout the city. Can you elaborate on that again for us, please?
I certainly can. We have it available in City Hall. We put it in the AED machines. It's a co-locator kit. Just mentions it right above the AED machine that you can access Narcan in the lobby. We also have it at Main Street Station in a very similar, and again, in the AED machine. And then we're actively working to purchase 3 harm reduction vending machines, so Narcan vending machines that we'll put in 3 locations across the city. We have 2 locations identified currently, the library on 25th Street and right here, GRTC transfer station. We're still working out the 3rd location, but that is Narcan free of charge. All you have to do is enter your zip code to get to access it. And it's not just Narcan in these machines. It's harm reduction, like first aid kits, wound care kits, resources. There's a special wrap that goes around them that we're gonna, we have some of our team here working on a marketing design.
I got one more. You probably already told us the answer, but specifically for like South Side, is there, with all this information, both English and Spanish? And if there are places that house Narcan, there is also both English and Spanish language?
Absolutely, yes, that's the intent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have a public hearing on this paper.
Is there anyone here present today that would like to speak in support of item 2? Is there anyone here present that would like to speak in opposition of item 2? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Bring it back to the body.
Ms. Jones?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I motion that we move forward to council for approval.
I'll second that motion.
The committee is voting on the motion to forward item 2, ordinance 2025-002, to council with the recommendation to approve. Vice Chair Jones?
Aye.
Chair Robinson?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we'll move to agenda item number 3 and 4.
Item 3, ordinance 2025-003, to authorize the CAO to accept funds in the amount of $2.3 million from the Virginia Resources Authority and to amend the FY 2025 water utility budget for the purpose of funding the city's lead water service line replacement and water service line inventory programs. And item 4, ordinance 2025-004, to authorize the CAO to execute a financing agreement between the city and the Virginia Resources Authority for the purpose of funding the city's lead water service line replacement and water service line inventory programs. Those papers are before the committee.
Good afternoon, Chair Robertson, Vice Chair Jones. Billy Vaughn, Deputy Director for Finance in the Department of Public Utilities. Both of these papers are related to DPU's lead service line replacement program, which has been in existence for a couple of years and will be accelerating as we go forward with some new lead and copper rules that have come down from the federal government. Specifically, Ordinance 2025-003 is a grant agreement between the City of Richmond and the Virginia Resources Authority. This grant will fund the private side replacement, the customer side of the meter, the replacement of lead services within the City of Richmond. It's a $2,377,500 grant. This will continue the work that we've been doing for the last couple of years. The second paper, ordinance number 2025-004, this is to have the CAO sign a funding agreement. This is a 1% loan in the amount of $2,622,500 that will be used to finance the city side of those lead service line replacements. Have any questions? We can answer those for you now.
Question, Ms. Jones? Stay stay put. We probably will have some questions. But we'll move to a public hearing at this time. Thank you very much for the presentation. Madam Clerk, we move to the public hearing.
Is there anyone here present today that would like to speak in support of item 3 or 4? Is there anyone here present today that would like to speak in opposition of item 3 or 4? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Bring it back to the body.
Ms. Jones?
I was just wanting to get a little better understanding on the 1% loan you just mentioned. Sorry.
Yeah, this is a loan, low interest loan program from VRA. We tap the Virginia Resources Authority for a variety of financing agreements, below market rate loans for infrastructure improvements across public utilities. This one here is specifically for lead line replacements on the city side, which is from the main to the meter. So this will fund replacement of those lead services at a below market rate, which will help our ratepayers because that's less money that we'll have to finance in the open market.
Okay, so thank you. One of the demand for addressing this total challenge that we have before us with lead. There were some maps and so forth that you all had made provided to us where we have significant challenges. My understanding with the grant is that it will be implemented based on requests for services, correct?
Correct.
And one of the concerns that we have, or that I have, is that the older part of the city probably have more challenges than if there is a new part of the city, right?
Correct.
And not always when we have an implementation strategy just based on requests for services. So give us an idea, give us an explanation of what is required of the resident in order to request a grant. What kind of information they need to provide in order to make an application for a grant. How do you determine whether or not they are eligible? And whether or not there's any equity built in your outreach and your marketing to make sure that those folk that are more, that we often think are more likely to make the request, take advantage of it, and we do not get as much service delivered to other residents. How do we balance those things out?
Yeah,
And what are your program eligibility? That would be very
understand. Great
helpful.
questions. I'm going to bring up Rhonda Johnson. She has been a pivotal part of the program, so she'll be able to address some of those questions.
Please state your name and title for the record.
Good afternoon, Rhonda Johnson, Public Information Manager for the Department of Public Utilities. And thank you, Chair Robertson and Vice Chair Jones. Great question there. And this program does have an equity component in it. We are following some of the federal Justice 40 initiatives that have been created by the Biden-Harris administration, and that is requiring us to spend about 40% of this funding for properties that are in the Justice 40 area, mostly disadvantaged. We have about 10 spots that are currently available in phase 4 of our funding that started back this summer. I do have some information available for what all is required. I can leave these with your liaison if you like. And like I said, we have about 10 spots open here. Part of what we're also doing is developing a replacement plan that's required to be complete by 2027. And that replacement plan is going to allow us to really be more strategic about how we're replacing lines on both the private and the public sides. And one of the pieces of that is actually finding out what material is across the city. And so we have a water service line inventory that we've had over the past year. We've been developing that, and we submitted it to VDH in accordance with federal guidelines by the deadline of October 16th. And so one of the first steps is to really go on that map on the survey and identify what material your water pipes are made of. And if it's identified to be lead, then again, we have 10 places right now in the current funding stream. The next funding stream will be open in spring of this year. And again, we will be using the Justice for the Initiative, so prioritizing disadvantaged and vulnerable communities.
Would you share with us what those 10 spots are?
For anyone who has lead lines on the private side in their homes, leading to their homes, they can apply if they are in the Justice 40 neighborhood, because you still have to complete that 40%. And that's what's remaining, roughly about 10 replacements. They're about $6,000 per replacement.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we have enough information that we are looking at the maps and knowing exactly where service is being delivered in the city, and making sure that I'm glad to hear that you do have an equity lens in this, and that 40% of the funding is specifically targeting neighborhoods that probably are most adversely impacted. One of the questions that residents will ask, two questions that they ask is, will other public facilities, like previously we've had some challenges as it relates to lead in the water at schools. And there have been other public facilities that there have been questions about lead, and whether or not these funds are available to address those concerns in our own public facilities. And the other question that residents ask is that, and fear that they have as it relates to their children being tested positive for lead. And that's a real impediment that some residents are fearful of having that test done, having it come back as a positive result, not knowing what resources are available to provide the services and treatment that is needed. So how are we doing in that aspect of the whole community education and making sure that we are eliminating unnecessary fear that may prevent someone from calling to have having their pipes looked at?
Okay, very good questions there. And for the public facilities piece of it, so a lot of the lead pipes that was used back in the 60s and 70s, they were the smaller pipes that are only mostly feeding private residences. And sometimes, like with the schools, and we work with the Richmond public school system as well as a lot of daycares in the city, and they have been doing their own research and identification for those pipes that come to on the outside of the buildings. Then they usually have a lot of pipes that are transferring that water into different parts of the building. So they have been engaged with that. And I know that last year there was some funding from the Virginia Department of Health for some of those initiatives. And we connected the Richmond City Schools with VDH on that funding. But we still have funding for daycares. And we, again, outreach and asked them to identify what their water service lines are made of, and have worked with funding for them. As far as the child testing for lead, we know that no parent wants to hear that, and lead is certainly a dangerous material, and no amount of lead is safe. As far as the water and lead goes, we can do some testing, and if anyone is concerned about that, we can definitely do a test for that. I know that, recently I heard of an incident where the child tested for lead, and it was because of soil that had been in their neighborhood. But we do want to identify what that source of lead is, and then DPU, for anything that's water related, we definitely want to work towards removing that. And then until we can get it removed, we do have some information about what families can do to prevent that exposure of lead. That information is available on our website. This QR code that's here, but we are definitely working towards some other just, kind of general education about that throughout this year.
Okay, so yeah, I'll be interested in getting that information to all council members. Because I think it's one thing to have the education or have the testing. Frequently, the concern is, what do I do about it, and can I afford to do anything about it? And so I look forward to your information, and hopefully it will give us some sense of direction of not only um, identifying, but measures that families can take to address the situation if it so exists with their family.
Yes, Madam Chair.
All righty. Any other questions? Right, we'll have a public hearing on these two papers.
We have already passed for the
Okay.
public hearing.
That was a callback. I kind of realized that after I said it. All right, bring it back to the committee for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, Madam President. I move that we move number 3, number 4, ordinance 2025-003 and 004 to council for approval.
Motion to approve.
I'm offer to approve, I'm sorry. Yep.
Second. More than a head shake.
Second.
Thank you. Call the question, Madam Clerk.
The committee is voting on the motion to forward item 3, ordinance 2025-003, and item 4, ordinance 2025-004 to council with a recommendation to approve. Ms. Lynch?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jones?
Aye.
Chair Robinson?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Agenda item number 5.
Item 5, ordinance 2025-005 to authorize the CAO to accept funds in the amount of $262,500 from the United States Department of Energy and to amend the FY 2025 special fund budget by creating a new special fund for the Office of Sustainability called the Grant EECBG Home Energy Audits, Energy Savings for Richmond's Workforce Housing Program Special Fund and appropriating $250,000 of such funds to Veridiant for energy efficiency assistance for low-income residents. That paper is before the committee.
Thank you.
Good
Hi.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Thomas, Director of the Office of Sustainability. It's a pleasure to be here to discuss this paper with you all, to receive these dollars from the Department of Energy in the amount of $262,500. The national average for energy burden, or how much of a person's income is spent on utilities, is 3.3%. In the city of Richmond, that average is significantly higher, well over the energy burden level of 6%. We are actually at 8.4% energy burden in this community, and it is disproportionately impacting our community members. So these dollars would explicitly go towards energy savings, to go to homes, approximately 100 homes within the community, and do an energy audit and implement energy savings, resulting in immediate fiscal savings for those residences. This is a collaboration with Housing and Community Development, Department of Public Utilities, and Department of Emergency Communications. They have already, through the Healthy Homes program, identified properties and are in process of identifying properties for that program. So we are going to be utilizing those already underserved community members that are going to be serviced by that program and attaching this to those homes. So residents do not have to apply for or think about how to get integrated into this. It is going to enhance dollars that are already being spent on those community members. A small portion of the funding outside of the $250,000 going to Veridiant to do the energy study and implement. The rest, $12,500, will be utilized by the Office of Sustainability to do a case study on energy burden community-wide to help understand better where else we need to focus similar efforts on those most disproportionately impacted by energy burden, as well as support climate education and energy efficiency education materials to go along to those 100 homes.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions? at this time? Thank you. Madam Clerk, we'll move to the public hearing on this paper.
Is there anyone here present today that would like to speak in support of item 5? Is there anyone here present that would like to speak in opposition of item 5? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Bring it back to the body.
Ready? Any motion or comments, question?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
The committee is voting on the motion to forward item 5, ordinance 2025-005, to council with a recommendation to approve. Ms. Lynch?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jones?
Aye.
Chair Robinson?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Madam Clerk.
Item 6, ordinance 2025-006, to amend the vehicle lease agreement between the city and the Richmond Ambulance Authority for the purpose of adding 6 chase vehicles to the vehicle lease agreement. Item 7, ordinance 2025-007, to amend the capital improvement projects for the FY 2025 by increasing estimated revenues by $977,721 to the vehicle replacement project in the capital vehicle and equipment category for the purpose of purchasing 6 chase vehicles by the city to the Richmond Ambulance Authority. Those papers are before the committee.
Right, good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. Michael Nguyen, Deputy Finance Director for the Department of Finance. The 2 papers before you are fairly straightforward, but in quick summary, the city has an existing lease agreement with the Richmond Ambulance Authority in place to purchase and lease back the ambulances that we purchased several years ago. The Ambulance Authority has requested that the city provide a similar arrangement where we purchase 7 chase vehicles and lease back to the Ambulance Authority those chase vehicles after we retrofit them for their use. So the items before you, the first item is to open up the existing lease agreement, which is in place for the ambulances, to add the 7 chase vehicles. The second paper is to allow us to use short-term financing through the capital improvement plan in order for us to purchase those vehicles and finance them on behalf of the Ambulance Authority. I've got here with me our budget director, and it looks like several folks from the Ambulance Authority. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions at this time? Ms. Lynch?
Just on the cost of the chase, and you'll have to educate us. The chase vehicles are the SUV vehicles that the paramedics and EMS ride along in.
I think the short
Yeah.
answer is yes, but
Okay,
certainly others here have probably more technically capable.
Are we getting, I'm sure you all have done your diligence on this, but are we, compared to other localities, are we getting a good deal on the cost of the chase vehicles? And if we're not, illuminate for us why that is.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chip Decker, CEO, Richmond Ambulance Authority. So the cost of the vehicle is actually not the biggest part. It's all the build out that makes it into an emergency vehicle that allows us to carry the equipment and the equipment on board, like the $35,000 heart monitor. So is it a good deal? I think it's a good deal. We do a lot of business with these folks, and so yeah, it's hard to get emergency vehicles these days. So we have the vehicles on the ground ready to have them upfitted, if you will, to use. And if you're not familiar with what a chase vehicle is that it'll either be staffed with a paramedic, or it could be staffed with an EMT. It can go to the most critical calls or help out with the more home assistance calls. And if necessary, it can since we're using advanced life support ambulances with paramedics on board, as well as EMT ambulances that are basic life support, the chase vehicle can make that basic life support ambulance a paramedic level. And so it also will add to our ability and our posting plan to have units across the city. And so hopefully with our response times, compliance, and overall number of unit hours we're able to produce. Too much information. Okay.
We'll move to a public hearing on these papers, Madam Clerk.
Is there anyone here present today that would like to speak in support of items 6 or 7? Is there anyone present that would like to speak in opposition of items 6 or 7? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Bring it back to the body.
So let me ask a follow-up question. Is this a standard kind of vehicle that most ambulance authorities would have in their inventory? And are we adding another response vehicle to any call for ambulance? My understanding now, we have at least 2 fire and ambulance that responds to emergency calls, to do support services, to make sure we are providing the best quality and the quickest quality of services. So I want to make sure that we are understanding whether or not this is a pretty standard vehicle that almost any ambulance service in the region would have. Does the city already have some such? And why are we purchasing all 6 at the same time? We've been frequently told, never buy your total fleet all at one time so they all wear out at the same time, rather staggering in it. So if you could help us with those questions, Chip, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Right. So it is a standard system design, is having a tiered response and using, some people call them quick response vehicles, in the county. That's what we called them there. But it is an SUV, basically, and it's an SUV that will respond in addition. But yes, it is a standard model that is frequently used, and when you move away from, say, an all ALS model, then it's becoming the industry standard is to use a chase vehicle or a quick response vehicle. As far as purchasing all 6 at once, in starting up the program, all right, we have to start somewhere. Currently, we're using some of the a couple of the old supervisor vehicles that should have been retired in order to provide the service. So the way that we generally do our budget is that we'll go back to getting ambulances next year. We usually have to get like 7 ambulances a year to keep rotating the fleet. And then we'll take a year off and buy heart monitors. All right. And so at this point, it's easier to have everything identical. And so you can move from one vehicle to another vehicle, and they are all set up identically. So just like we do with heart monitors, just like we do with ambulances, having them all purchased at the same time, and then we will manage the rotation of them by how much we use them with the mileage, if we need to go down that path. So yeah, it's not something that we currently have that we can rotate and like buy one this year and one next year because we'd like to get the program up and running and then look to see when we rotate the vehicles out.
Okay, do you see 6 as the magic number that you would need for your fleet? Or are you saying we're starting with 6, but next year we may need 12?
No, next year, I'm going to say we need ambulances to go back to replacing ambulances.
Okay, so 6 would probably be your maximum fleet at any given time.
That's certainly the thought right now.
Okay.
And it's a much less expensive way of putting additional resources on the street than it is to, have 2 people in an ambulance
Okay,
supporting it. So,
all righty. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Any other questions? We've had a public hearing, so we'll bring it back. Did we have a public hearing? I mean, we have so many people that speak at the public hearing, it's sometimes difficult to remember. Madam Clerk, have we had a public hearing on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Back to the committee for action.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
The committee is voting on the motion to forward item 6, ordinance 2025-006, and item 7, ordinance 2025-007, to council with the recommendation to approve. Ms. Lynch?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jones?
Aye.
Chair Robertson?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's move to agenda item number 8.
Item 8, ordinance 2025-008, to authorize the CAO to execute a grant agreement between the city, 2811 Ratty LLC, and the EDA for the purpose of facilitating the construction of an affordable residential development at 2811 Ratty Street. That paper's before the committee.
Good afternoon, Chairman Robertson, Vice Chair Jones, and Councilmember Lynch. My name is Merrick Malone, and I am the Director of Housing and Community Development. I am here seeking the authorization to enter into an affordable housing performance grant between the EDA and the 2811 Reddy Street LLC, which is ruling Elmington Capital Partners, to construct 400 units of affordable housing with an AMI from 50% to 80%. The total development cost of this project is $77.5 million, so really leveraged quite a bit. The other thing is that we also require under the grant a $4 million capital investment to take care of the properties during the course of the grant period. So that's what we're seeking to do. The developer is seeking 4% tax credits, and as you know, this would add to their competitive nature since our projects compete with other projects all over the state of Virginia. So this is what we're seeking, and it's 400 units.
And elaborate again, I'm sorry, on the 4 million.
We have a requirement in all of our performance grants that they provide evidence of escrow of money to be able to do capital improvements over the course of the 15-year grant. We want to be able to put, systems and things of that nature so that it's guaranteed to maintain the properties.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Madam Clerk, let's have a public hearing on this paper, please.
Is there anyone here present today that would like to speak in support of item 8? Is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition of item 8? Seeing none, public hearing is now closed. Bring it back to the body.
Questions, comments from the committee members? Okay. I just wanted to point out that there is a special use permit that that will be coming before the council in relationship to this paper as well. and it is in the 6th district, and we will be having more community meetings in regards to the special use permit. But I would ask the committee to consider moving this paper forward. I'm concerned that we do not miss the application process for the low-income tax credit that would leverage this development. However, the SUP would have to be a part of that application process to the state as well. So it is important that we get those documents through the legal process and to council and whatever action council may needs to take so that we can be in line with the timeline for the application for this, to put 400 additional affordable housing units in the city of Richmond at this level of investment is tremendous. And I'm grateful to see how much an influence the performance grant is having with the private sector and finding ways to finance affordable housing. So either of you would offer a motion?
So movement. Oh, Candace kill me. I move that we forward to council for approval.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
The committee is voting on the motion to forward item 8, ordinance 2025-008 to council with a recommendation to approve. Ms. Lynch,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jones,
Aye.
Chair Robertson.
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Okay. Next, we have a presentation, financial payment grace period from the Department of Finance.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and Honorable Councilmember Lynch. My name is Sheila White. I'm the Director of Finance for the City of Richmond. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with a brief recap of the grace period being offered to residents for payment of taxes, fees, and fines because of the declaration of the state of emergency. Over the last week, as the city responded to the state of emergency, city offices were closed to taxpayers. Because these closures may have impacted the ability of taxpayers and ratepayers to pay their January bills on time through no fault of their own, the city is offering a grace period of 10 days before penalty and interest will be applied. Additionally, during this period, the city also halted all collection activity through our third-party collection agencies, TACS and Bellato Law Firm. This grace period applies to real estate tax bills, which were due on January 14th, ADAM bills, transient occupancy, meals tax bills. Those bills were related to their December collections that were due, that would have been due on January 20th. Delinquent tax payment arrangements, which had various due dates because of the payment plans. Utilities, water and gas, which also run on different billing cycles. Utility promise pay agreements and payment plans. Parking tickets. And any other fines or fees that would have been collected during that time. If taxpayers do not pay within that grace period of the 10 days, penalty and interest will be applied, and that will go back to the date, the original due date, and that is per code. That is our program. Any questions or comments at this time?
So thank you for the presentation. And this is in regards to the changes that we're making and grace period that's being allowed secondary to the incident that we just dealt with as it relates to our water crisis, right?
That is correct.
Okay, I think when we initially made this request, it was in reference to a request that was made at the Finance Committee meeting in November, I guess, in regards to the business taxes and other programs that we were working on as to the number of cases that had been closed. We asked for an update on the organizational chart, We understand that there are several new additional employees in the department. So that request was made at that time in reference to that. This incident came up secondary to that, and so the expectation as far as this presentation was to follow up on closure of the request that was made at the last Finance Committee meeting. And perhaps we weren't clear in that request. So we have not received that information that we asked for at that meeting. And so we would ask that you provide us with that information and be prepared to bring us current with the status of that at the next Finance Committee meeting in February, as well as any follow-up information in regards to this current grace that we are giving, rightfully deserved, for the benefit of all, in regards to the crisis that we just faced. Will that work?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns by the committee members? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, if I'm correct, I think that is the end of the docket and the agenda that is before us. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so before I close the meeting out, there's one additional comment I just want to share with the committee. I've been working with the staff very closely and looking at the duties and responsibilities of the committee. There are several outstanding challenges that we know that we have that we've been working with administration to address. And what I wanted to do is to set an agenda for the entire year, the best that we can. Things always come up and change any plans. But to make sure that we get some critical things on our agenda that we've been talking about that needs to be done. One of the challenges, and there's a list that administration has given us, and there's a tentative list that I have shared with the staff that I want the entire list to be shared with you guys. And then, and in all fairness, if any of the council members want to weigh in on it, that's perfectly fine as well. We serve at the pleasure of the council. We don't serve at the pleasure of ourselves. And so I want to make sure that those outstanding issues that both the administration and council have been challenged with year after year, that we put them on the agenda. We make that list, and we also have a work session that we go through that list and we talk about what's in that list and what do we want to see. This will be a joint work session with the committee and the administration so that we can form our own agenda and get through some of those things. We've got some huge challenges come before us. We still have some collective bargaining issues that we haven't resolved as of yet. We certainly have the concern about aligning our appraisal timeline with the budget. So that's just two big examples of some things that we're concerned about. One of the other concerns, and then we'll call this meeting closed, is that we appropriate money and it goes into non-departmental or somewhere, and then the paper has to come back to us for a reappropriation. We just did that this afternoon, and it's 7 months into the year. And we are just moving the funds to the appropriate line item so that the funds can be expended and so we can do better. And so that will be another example of the kinds of things that we want to put on this agenda for the work plan. And I don't know that any of us have an answer for those. We're probably going to need legal in there to help us figure out. I think we agree to some of the objectives that we want to achieve, but it's important that we work partnership with that so that we're not asking for something that's not realistic possible. And also the advice from our attorneys to be in there for any policies and those kind of things, changes that will have to be made. If you all agree, I've asked the staff to look at doing a polling of a timeline that we would be able to do that. We intend to get the draft list to you all within the week, next week at the earliest, at the latest, and set a time that works for everyone so that we can have the work session. We are hopeful that we'll be able to have the work session before the next finance meeting so that we can approve the agenda. That's the mission and the goal that we're striving toward, if that meets with you all's approval. Okay? All righty, Madam Clerk, we'll finish. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your support.